All right, we should be live on Facebook. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Passion to Profession podcast. Very, very excited today because we are speaking with Adam Davidson. Adam, how are you doing?
Great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Now, guys, I was just saying to Adam before we started that because he's had such a wonderfully diverse and interesting background, I could have spoken for an hour about everything that Adam's done in his career. But to give you guys a high level, because this is a podcast we've been very excited for some time, Adam's the CEO of Uncanny, which is a podcast production company where Adam also hosts a podcast called the Passion Economy podcast. He's also co-founder of NPR's Planet Money podcast. And when you're not in the podcast booth, I know you're also an accomplished journalist writing for the New York Times Magazine, the New Yorker, the American Life, and author of the book, The Passion Economy. This is a book, guys, that I absolutely love. It's a groundbreaking book that lays out really, the way I see it is the rules for thriving in the 21st century. And actually, we didn't know this when we started Passion, our company, but our goal is to give you guys the tools, the information, the mindset to thrive in the passion economy. So I'm really excited to chat to you, Adam, about how we can all benefit from this new economic framework. So again, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much. That was a lovely, very flattering intro.
Nice. I'm glad. So can we start with a quick intro from your side, and specifically what I really loved in the book is like your grandfather and your father had these very opposing views, and it led you down, I think, quite an interesting path. So if you could give us a quick intro, that would be great.
Sure. I'm a bit older than you. I was born in 1970, and I feel like I was raised to think that you had a choice. You could have a financially secure life, or you could have a passionate life, and you couldn't do both. And obviously, the entire point of my book, my podcast, and the entire point of Passion.io is that that's no longer the choice. You can actually, not only can you do both, you sort of have to do both, as I will argue and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So in trying to explain this, I think a lot about how the 20th century was just a weird time in human history. It was unlike almost anything that came before, and it's actually a terrible guide for what's happening now. And I tell that story through my family, as you mentioned. So my grandfather, Stanley Jack Davidson Sr., was about as American an American man could be in the American century. Big, tall, strapping, really good looking guy, had a full head of hair right up until he died at 99. He really looked like Superman. That's not just me saying it, if you look at a picture. And he was in 1936, he had some kid, he was only 18, he had a child, a wife. He went to work at a factory, a miserable factory, and just worked and worked and worked his entire life. And it wouldn't even occur to him to say, do you like your job? Do you love your job? Does your job represent who you are as a person? I mean, it would be a ridiculous question. He worked in the machine tool business where giant machines grind metal, and you can imagine it's, your blue overcoat, oil everywhere, fine metal particles in the air. I mean, it's just brutal work. And my dad grew up not even knowing what his father did. All my dad knew was whatever his father did was terrible, because his dad came home angry and unhappy, but he did his job. And my father, also named Stanley Jack Davidson Jr., from his birth was in 1936, he was a passionate kid. He was a passionate guy. And he eventually realized he wanted to be an actor. And growing up in blue collar Massachusetts, son of a factory worker, it's like all those movies in England about, the kid in the mining town who wants to be a dancer or whatever. It was utterly absurd. In fact, my dad went to theater school having never seen a play or met an actor. He just knew he wanted to be one. And his father had such contempt for my dad's choices, and it really caused an enormous amount of pain in my family. And my dad knew when he became an actor that that meant he would not have financial security. And in fact, I think he took great pride. I know he took great pride in making that choice. And he would always tell me as a kid that I shouldn't choose money, I should choose passion. I should choose to do the things I love to do. And it took me a very long time, and also it took the complete transformation of how the global economy works, for me to realize the choices my grandfather faced in the 1930s and the choices my father faced in the 1960s are not the choices I face, and they're not the choices you face or the people watching now. That in the 20th century, the central economic engine of growth all over the world was mass production. It was small companies getting big, making the same thing over and over and over again. And that model requires everybody in an organization, except maybe a tiny group of leaders, to just do what they're told, to follow protocol, to do the work more efficiently, more effectively. And that filtered down to how people thought about what is a job, identity, fun, who you are. That's something you do on the weekend. That has nothing to do with your work life. But today, all the automatable things, all the repetitious things, all the repeatable things are done by, look at your company. 20 years ago, if I wanted an app, I needed to know how to code everything about an app. Well, there weren't apps 20 years ago, so that's an even additional problem. But you do the boring, I'm sure you do very interesting stuff, but you take care of the stuff I don't want to have to take care of, so I can go from idea to product. And that exists in so many ways. You and I right now could come up with an idea for a new product, get it prototyped in China, get a drop shipper to ship it to people, take out Facebook ads, and for $500, we could be in business with a whole host of support. So the kernel of an idea, the unique ideas that we're able to generate, our passions, our unique insights are essential to success. They're not contrary to success. And that's what, like, my grandfather couldn't understand my dad. My dad, I don't think, could understand me, but I get to be both of them. I get to live my passion, and I get to also be financially secure. And so do so many other people. Great news, I think.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's both. You talk about how it's necessary and how it's and how we can do both at the same time. And for me, that's exactly what we're really helping people to achieve that passion. Now, thank you for that wonderful introduction. What I love about this podcast is because we're streaming live, we can see you guys who are here watching, like Sue and Rebecca and Lawrence and Lara and Laura and Leah and Scott and a bunch more who haven't commented yet. So drop your comments below. And because this is live, you guys, you get to ask Adam questions, and I can put them to Adam during the podcast. So please ask your questions in the comment section right now. Of course, I'm very excited to ask my questions, so I'm going to do so as well. So Adam, in your book, you talk about the rules of the passion economy. Can you outline, like, what are the rules of the passion economy? What are the steps if someone wants to take the first steps, let's say, to being successful in the passion economy?
Sure, absolutely. I think the conceptual framework is basically something like what I just said, which is I'd like to say that the 21st century can have the best of the 19th century and the best of the 20th century. And let me explain what that means, and that'll explain the rules. So if you think of the world before, say, 1870, 1880, almost everybody who had ever lived, their manufactured goods, the stuff they had, their clothes, their shoes, their food, either was made at home or made nearby by somebody who they knew well. Probably their grandparents knew the other person's grandparents. There was immigration and travel, but basically the world was very local, very intimate, where you rarely purchased anything from someone far away. Then starting around the 1880s, starting in the UK and the US, eventually continental Europe, eventually much of Asia, and eventually the whole world, we had this new thing, which is mass manufacturing at a distance, where the vast majority of things we buy were made by somebody we'll never meet, at a factory we'll never visit, in a city we'll never go to. And there was enormous advantages to that mass system. It was all about making things cheaper. I think of soap. You have in before the 1870s, people would make soap out back using animal fat or vegetable fat, or you'd go to a small local store and they just chop you off a piece of soap. You don't know who made it, when they made it. Suddenly there's ivory soap everywhere, and it's exactly wrong for everybody. It's a terrible soap. It dries your skin, but it was cheap, it was abundant, it was available. So if the 19th century is all about intimacy, really knowing the people who produce goods, but having very little variety, the 20th century was all about scale. It was all about whoever makes the most for the cheapest amount, gets it to the most people, wins. So what I would say we have now is something I think of as intimacy at scale. I can create something unique and special. I can have a relationship with my customers that's intimate. They know me, I know them. In some cases, that's literally true, where you see people having thriving careers as accountants, lawyers, others with only 30 clients, 40 clients, because they're providing so many services, they're able to charge a much higher rate and really have that intimacy. Or it's, you have thousands or millions of customers, but you're using data analytics and other tools to really understand them with a depth and precision that, ivory soap would never use. And so you can have that intimacy. You can find your village of people who fully get you and you get them, but you can have that village spread all over the world because of modern technology. And so the rules are, you have to find your unique things. So that is an inward-looking process, and it's a hard thing. I sometimes think people dismiss the idea of a passion economy as, oh, you're just saying people should just do whatever they feel like. No, it's hard work almost nobody is born or graduates college or high school knowing exactly what makes them unique and exactly what they want to do. That's a hard inward-looking process. And then there's an outward-looking process where you're trying to find, who are my people? Because the more special the thing you create is, the more likely the first group of people to see it are not going to be interested because your thing is special. And so you have to find your people. Now, luckily, Passion.io, Facebook ads, there's lots of tools that didn't exist in the 20th century to find those people more effectively. But that's the process. So basically, don't do the 20th century. Don't do things that scale. Inefficiency is your friend. You want to really dig in on the things that take time. That's the whole Y Combinator idea. And don't be afraid to be weird, to be unusual, to have people hate what you do. That's okay. That's actually a good sign. Now, you don't want everyone to hate what you do, so that would be a mistake.
Yeah.
So those are the broad ideas of the rules.
That's fantastic. And it raises a couple of topics that are very important for our customers. So I don't know how much you know about Passion, but we want to give people the tools, the information, and the mindset to thrive in the passion economy. Now, for us, the tools is, effectively a mobile app. We believe that we're helping coaches mainly, and trainers and teachers. So they are sharing their skills, their message. And we believe that mobile is where people spend their time and the best way to have impact. So that's the tools. But what we realized very early is tools on their own are not enough, because a lot of coaches and teachers come from what you call the widget economy, which is they're trading time for money. So it's like, what's a good hourly rate, right? Like, coaches charge this much an hour, so that's what I'm going to charge, for example, in terms of pricing. So there's like a lot of mindset things and information things that we also need to help people crack. And you raised two really, I think, important things for our listeners there. One is price, okay? And I want to dive into that. And the other one is being very niche, okay? And let's go there first, because I think it leads nicely to pricing. One of the most counterintuitive principles, I think, that you raise in the book, and you explain it beautifully, is about being so niche that companies don't want to copy you. And as soon as it's something that a big company would copy or would do, you actually stop doing it, right? Which for someone who's like entrepreneurial and wants to like do big things feels like super, super counterintuitive. So can you explain a little bit why that is?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such for your core clientele, I think this is so crucial to understand that the generalizable good, so something that is just everyone would recognize as good. I'm a coach and I'll teach you how to be more successful, more happy, more. okay, we all want to be more successful, more happy. Great. But I'm going to then compare you to 5 million other coaches who are telling me the same thing. And maybe you have a 4.9 star rating and the other person has a 4.8, but am I really going to pay you $1,000 more an hour because you have, 0.1 more stars or whatever? I don't want to hear that. But what I do want to hear is I only work with this person. And maybe 99% of the time, for me, I'm going to say, I'm not interested. That's not for me. But the 1% when I am interested, you're the only one I want. And so if you look at large companies, Procter and Gamble, Unilever, for example, Starbucks, large accounting firms and advisory services, they are in a real crisis. In advertising, they call them the full service agency, meaning we do everything. What do you need? We do everything. And you are locked forever in what economists call price taking, meaning all you get to charge is what the market is. It's like being a farmer of just standard wheat or cotton. You can lovingly make your wheat, or you can cynically make wheat lazily, or whatever. It doesn't matter. You go to the market, it's whatever it is priced at that moment. And so don't be a commodity is one of the most important rules in the passion economy. You do not, if you want to be a commodity, then you better be like Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, or Cargill, Unilever. You better be selling billions of units because you're going to be making a fraction of a penny. And if you're not at that scale, then whoever is at that scale is going to kill you. What you want to do is so fully serve your audience that they really have no choice. You are the one who knows them best. And there is a huge fat area between where you can get really big. You can make hundreds of millions of dollars, but you're not big enough that the big guys want to take over you. So just as an example, in the book, I talk about Ocho Candy, which makes a lovely, wonderful candy bar, organic. For me, it's much better than any of the mass-produced M&M Mars type, Hershey's type candy bars. They're heading towards $100 million a year in revenue, which is a lot. I mean, you can have a very good life as an entrepreneur who created $100 million a year in revenue company, creating a very special bar that people love. Hershey's and M&M Mars are so big that that's probably how much chocolate spills on the floor in a week at one of their plants. They can't think in terms of $100 million. Now, not everyone in my book is making 100 million. Some of them are making, 400,000 a year or 300,000 a year, but in a very happy, good way. And they're doing a business that the big scale companies, it's too small for them to care about, so they're not going to zero in on that market. So you're remarkably safe. I think it's one of the safest financial positions to be in, is to have a clearly articulated niche that's big enough to make you have a real business, but small enough that nobody else is going to waste the time. And once you're there for a year or two, you have a client base, someone else waking up to it is just, they're behind, they're not going to be able to make it. So I've found so many of these companies. There's an ad agency I met that only focuses on the smaller hospitals in third tier Midwest cities in America. And I said, is there enough business for an ad? They said, oh, we're so busy, we can't do all the business. And I said, is it so specific? They have specific needs? They said, oh, their needs are so specific and we are the experts. We know everything about what they need. So then you're having a different conversation. You're not saying, it's not like Etsy where like, I want a leather wallet and there's 30 companies that are offering me a leather wallet. It's not the hospital is putting out a request for proposal and getting 50 offers and we're all competing to get the deal. You're having a totally different conversation. They're calling you, you're not pitching them. You're immediately discussing not how your price relates to your competition. You're discussing how much value you can bring them, and then charging based on the value you bring them. There's a lot of detail, and there's a lot of other books that I think are helpful, like Positioning for Professionals by Tim Williams is a great read. and a great guide to this way of thinking. But yes, hourly pricing for any kind of coaching is terrible. It just makes you a commodity. Nobody wants an hour of somebody's time. That's not how we think about it. We want value. We want our life to be better. And that is how you should price.
Absolutely. I always try to help our experts. That's our customers. We call them experts or passion fighters. I always try to help them understand that if you price on value, like what people are going to get out of it, and then work backwards in terms of what you need to put in, instead of starting from, well, how much am I putting in? How many hours am I investing? Like, they don't care about that. They literally don't care how many hours you're putting in. They just care about what they're getting out.
Yeah. Did anyone wake up in the morning and think, boy, I would love an hour and 20 minutes of an accountant's time? Or, you know what I'm getting for my birthday this year? I'm getting 2 hours of a lawyer's attention to a contract. I don't care. I'd rather pay more for a genius who can do it in 10 minutes than less for the person who, needs to spend 5 hours doing it. Why, we want the value.
Yeah.
But that also puts another pressure on the experts, which is articulating your value. And that's a crucial part of this. One of the people I write about is a coach named Jason Blummer, who's fabulous. And he works with people a lot like your clientele. And he often challenges them, let's double your rates. And they freak out. I can't double my rates. Nobody will pay it, but it forces a thinking. Well, if you can't double your rates, why not? Is it that your customers don't get what you do? Is it that you don't do something valuable enough that it's worth twice as much? And remarkably often, they do end up doubling their rates or more than doubling them, having far fewer clients, but adding so much more value that they're able to work less, add more value, be more deeply connected to their clients. And what Jason recommends, what I recommend, you should probably fire at least 10% of your clients today. Like almost definitely, if you're charging by the hour, there is some percentage of your clients that are costing you money. It might be they're just a pain in the neck. They don't get what you're offering. And it either actually takes more time or it's just a drain. You do a meeting with them and you're just kind of bummed out. And then you go to your next meeting and you're not on top of your game. Fire them and use that hour to refine your skills, to learn something new so that you can bring it to your next client, charge more money.
That's I couldn't agree more. And you know what's also great about doing this live, Adam, is I can see the comments here from people who so Rebecca said the penny just dropped. Okay, this is awesome because it's the principles that I believe are so important to thrive in this. Leah says this is kind of blowing my mind. Laura says this is awesome. So this is great.
Yeah.
You guys watching that? Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of like defining your niche, you guys who are watching, give us a letter Y in the comments right now if it's making sense. And if there's some other question around that, then put it in the comments because we'll get to it as well. Okay, later in the chat. So Adam, one of the things that I also think our experts, our passion fighters might struggle with is you talk in the book about actually like turning clients away, right? You just talked there about firing clients. A lot of our experts, they are coaches in the offline world. And then we show them how to essentially launch online with their own app. They launch out to the world and they have big goals, but they have to start somewhere, right? So they start with, we show them how to get their first 10 clients, then 100, then 1,000. Now, in that first 10 clients, we tell them to choose their niche. They put themselves out into the world and then they might get, let's say, 15 people saying that they're interested, right? And even though, they've probably chosen a niche, but because they're putting themselves out there, they'll get different people from different worlds and different demographics and everything. And like, I really try to instill the idea of like turning people away who are not your core niche, because that's the nucleus from which you're going to build. But at the same time, like saying no to like money when you're like at the start of a startup, how would you think about that for someone like really early in the journey?
Yeah, this is the central question, I have to say, because it's all fine and good to point to people who've been doing it 10 years, they've defined their niche, they have enough clients, they're making really good money, but I haven't defined my niche, say, like I'm a trainer and I just serve anybody and I have 300 clients and they're paying the bills. What do I do? So, or I haven't even begun, but I'm too scared. I need money. I got to pay my rent and I just lost my job and I want to do this. So I do think, and Jason Blummer, who's kind of a hero of my book, he says you can never niche too narrowly, but you can niche too quickly, which I think is a helpful point. And especially if you're just getting into it and you have a theory about what your niche is, but you don't really know yet, you probably do want a lot of clients. You want to be able to pay attention to who you really work with well, who seems to vibe on what you're offering, what that world looks like. And so I think a really helpful way to think about it, and I've seen many companies that do exactly what I'm describing. And I think Passion.io is a great tool potentially to do this, is you essentially have two businesses. You have your commodity business and you have your niche business. And you are, and sometimes you see this when like an ad agency or someone else is transitioning from a non-niche to a niche. And sometimes people start this way. So I tell the story in the book about an ad agency in North Carolina in the United States that just did everything in their city, in Charlotte, North Carolina, everything anyone needed. And they realized that wasn't going to get them anywhere, that those giant global firms were getting all the kind of full service business. They had to niche. And what they really knew was the home interior market, furniture, rugs, carpets, and they had deep expertise. And they essentially created like two websites, two ways of working. And one was a full service business where they were pricing competitive with the big guys. And the other was this super niched business. And pretty quickly, they just decided we're not taking new clients in the commodity business. We're only taking new clients in the niche business. And then at a certain point, they shared with their commodity clients. They wrote a very carefully written letter. They made a bunch of conversations, and they said, "We're not for you anymore, but we're going to hand you over to someone who we think is great. You don't have to work with them, but that's what we're going to do." So I think really think of them as two businesses, because it's not, in my mind, a niche business is not a commodity business where you price more, or a commodity. It really is a different business. It's a different relationship. The niche business probably has far fewer people who pay a lot more, but really get you. Whereas the commodity business, you probably have a lot more churn because you're sort of a commodity. So, so that's the best advice if you need that transition period. Although there are people who just say, all right, I'm going to be broke. I talked to someone the other day who said, I just decided for the first 3 years, I'm sleeping on my sister's couch and I'm just going to be broke. And he talked about how hard it was to date, because he's like, I'm building this business, but I don't have any customers and I'm sleeping on my sister's couch. It was sort of a rough 3 years, but it worked really well. So that's an individual choice. But get the hell out of the commodity business. That is the headline.
That's right.
As fast as you can.
Yeah, 100%. And I would say even more so, like this is, I think, even more important for coaches and trainers because they don't need to produce something. So there's actually much more competition, especially a lot of our customers are in health, fitness, yoga, that sort of thing. And so the way I see this for those guys is like, if you have a skill set that can help a broad range of people, you know, like define a niche and say, I'm doing, you know, yoga for this group of people, and then like observe the hotspots in the market. I was speaking to a coach the other day who said, I thought my market was going to be men. He's a guy, right? And he was teaching about obstacle course racing. He said, thought my market was going to be men. I launched this thing, but I didn't say whether men or women. And actually, he actually had a lot of women join. So he just noticed, okay, like women are, you know, interested in this specific kind of thing I'm doing. And then when he niched down further, he can be more specific to that group and then niche down further and further until he has his zero competition market, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm a fat, anxious New Yorker, and I have tried yoga a bunch of times. I really am interested in yoga. Every yoga studio I've gone into, I'm like, this is not for me. And they all seem to me to be exactly the same. The person who comes to me and is like, my thing is like skeptical, anxious people, and can talk to me, can speak to me, like I'm excited for that person. And I'm not even thinking like, well, I could get a cheaper deal with this other yoga instructor. Whereas my wife loves yoga. She'll just do any like YouTube video on yoga. She doesn't care. She's, you know, she might, although I bet there's someone who can serve her. I think of one of my favorite characters in my book is a guy named Cos Marte, who was a drug kingpin in New York in the 90s, made a fortune. He was like 18, 19. He was making millions of dollars a year dealing drugs, and very innovative. It was early text messaging, and he was using text messages to hand deliver drugs to people. He was upgrading from sort of a ghetto poor clientele to a wealthier clientele. Very clever, but totally illegal. Went to jail for many years. He went to jail as a fat guy, and he just worked out all the time. And he left prison, and it's a great story, which and it's also on the podcast. And he created gyms that he calls them Con Body. They're based on being in prison, and they it's all in a small space. And he said all the trainers are going to be other ex-cons. And to me, I don't want to go to that. Personally, I don't want to go to that gym. Sounds awful. I don't want to, like, I'm scared of it. It sounds like too much work. And I would guess 95% of people looking for a gym, that's the last thing they want. But he has found a fanatic clientele. Interestingly, also mostly women. That was a surprise to me, who will go to the ends of the earth for him and his staff. And that's a great model where he took the worst things about him, being an ex-con, not having enough money to buy all the fancy equipment, not, you know, and all his friends are ex-cons, and he made it into a unique value proposition that's 100% wrong for 95% and exactly what some group of people want and nobody can compete on.
Yeah. And you know what, like on top of you know, defining a very specific niche, what you've just articulated there is something I call an authentic niche, because he went to prison, he went in fat, he worked out, so it's his story. So, you know, you were talking about, you know, yoga for if you're skeptical and anxious, this is for you. Even more compelling if this person says, hey, I used to be skeptical, I used to be anxious, and then I did yoga and it helped me achieve X. And then I imagine that's even more compelling for you, because you can see they've done the journey that you're actually interested in going on.
Exactly. And now my wife's going to see that and say, wait, I always love yoga. I don't need, like, I'm not anxious, you know, she's not going to respond to it. But that's the point. And that I stole that from Positioning for Professionals by Tim Williams, that there are generically good things. If you're an ad agency, you don't want to say, we're always on time and we always do good artwork, or, you know, like everybody should be on time. Everyone should have competent art design. A positioning, a passion is something that people can reasonably hate or dislike. It is reasonable for me to say, I don't want a yoga instructor who is like, you know, who just assumes everybody loves yoga. I don't want a gym that's run by a bunch of felons and has no modern equipment. That's reasonable. That's not crazy. That's not a universal good. And your core value has to be something that some people like and some people don't like. And that's another, I think, saying no to clients, pricing above the market, and offering something that some number of people will dislike. Those are the tough steps. And they're especially tough because when you're starting out, when you haven't figured out how to find your people and they haven't figured out how to find you, most people you meet will be wrong. If you're doing something that's 100% right for 3% and 100% wrong for 97%, you're going to start out talking to a lot of that 97%. And so you're going to be getting a lot of negative feedback. Some of that feedback has real useful information. It doesn't, you may need to pivot, you may need to shift, you may need to refine or be more articulate, but it's going to be very discouraging. And so that to me is the real challenge. I do not want to suggest that this is super easy. You wake up one morning, you're fully formed as who you are. You announce it to the world, and by noon you have all the customers you need. It's it's work, it's time.
An evolution. It evolves,
evolution.
right? I couldn't agree more. And Adam, I really want to say thank you so much for articulating these core principles so well, because it's really what what I believe are so important for our customers to understand, for them to be successful. And that's all I focus on all day, every day. Like, how do I help these guys be as successful as possible? And your language around that is clearly resonating with people in the chat right now, and also I'm sure on the replay as well. So thank you so much for the time, Adam, today. Like, massive value that you just dropped for us, and yeah, I very much appreciate it. For those of you watching, head over to 3uncanny4.com/passion economy. I think Liam from the team is here live, so he'll drop a link in the comments right now. If you're watching on the replay, scroll to the bottom of the comments. That's where the link is going to be. That's the link for the podcast, I believe, or is that the link for the book?
Kind of for everything. Yeah, it is.
For both.
There's a podcast, a book, a newsletter, an amusement park ride. There's a casino. I'm just kidding. Just a podcast.
Well, you know what? Like, Adam, what's funny is, like, when, like, for the last, I don't know, two and a half weeks, I run quite often in the mornings, and so your voice is like, because I've been listening to the audio book, which I love, your voice is like, I feel like I should be on a run right now, right? So I really recommend it, you guys. If you don't have time to do the reading, put it on the audiobook. I know you're all working out and staying healthy, and like, you can find the time one way or another to read this book and listen to the podcast. Adam, thank you so much.
Yeah, this was a real pleasure. And I really like Passion.io, genuinely. I didn't know about it. When you guys reached out, I studied it, and I think you're doing something very special. So thank you.
Thank you very much. All right.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.